Good morning, everybody. We are so excited to be here. And my name is Miss Amanda. I am the principal at Education Imagine Academy. And I am so excited to get to introduce Miss Shanae, who is the Director of Education Programming at the Sedgwick County Zoo. And today she is going to talk to you guys about the nature of our Prairie, a Chickadee Checkoff program at our zoo. So I'm going to let her start. If you guys want to put in where you're watching from, how many kids are in your classroom, what grade level into the Q&A, that would be great. And if you have any questions, I will be able to ask those of Ms. Shanae at the end. So just throw them in there as we go through the presentation. Let's have a great time.
So glad that you're joining us here at Sedgwick County Zoo this morning. Again, my name is Shanae Anderson, and today we're going to focus on the prairie that is our nature. Now, as Amanda just said, this is a program that is funded by Kansas Wildlife and Parks, their Chickadee Checkoff program. This is a pretty interesting program where adults, when they pay their taxes every year, can donate just a little bit of extra money to help non-game wildlife in our state. That means the wildlife that we love to see and look at, but not necessarily the wildlife that has any other type of money value to them. So the Chickadee Checkoff is a great program. Now, I'll also let our teachers out there know this program is one that can go to your school at no cost if you're within Sedgwick County, thanks to that Chickadee Checkoff program. So if you're interested in learning more about the prairie that is our nature, give the Sedgwick County Zoo's Education Department a call or an email, and we'd love to set this up for you. I also want to let you know that the program is loosely based off the book, The Prairie That Nature Built. So as we go through today, you'll get to hear some different pieces from this particular book as we learn about some of the different animals that are home here at Sedgwick County Zoo. Now, the first thing to think about is what a prairie is. I want you guys to put on your thinking caps and think about that for a minute. When we think of prairies, sometimes we think of places that are just weedy or empty. They're areas generally that could have any tree.
We're going to hold on for just a second because we lost sound. Sometimes we have technical difficulties, but Miss Carrie's going to help us out.
You plugged all the way in?
Okay, we can hear you now.
Let's see when we can hear again.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay. So we're so glad you're here. And again, if teachers out there, if this program interests you for your pre-kindergarten, first grade ages, give us a call at Sedgwick County Zoo Education Department, and we would love to bring it to your classroom at no cost anywhere inside Sedgwick County. So when we think about the prairie that is our nature, we have to think of all the different critters that live on the prairie. And we think that the critters that live on the prairie, from above the sky and below the soil, our prairies are active at every level. And one of the most important prairie engineers important animals on the prairie, because what they do is help the prairie grasses grow. The earthworms get down there and do what earthworms do best. They dig tunnels. When they dig those tunnels, what happens is it allows the soil to have space. Around. Water needs to move around in the soil or the dirt. And thanks to our friends like the earthworms, they allow those little tunnels and holes so the soil can breathe and so the soil can drink and make all those plants healthy. So, while we're down underground, let's think of a couple of other animals that we might find underground as well. Now, these are the diggers. The diggers make the tunnels and the holes that the animals live in. One of the most important diggers that's out there are the prairie dogs. Now, here at our bison habitat, you won't see any prairie dogs. But at Sedgwick County Zoo, our prairie dogs haven't quite woken up yet for the morning. But prairie dogs are one of those animals that, because they're diggers, we say that they are one of the most important animals on the prairie because they provide homes for lots of different animals. As a matter of fact, one of the animals that prairie dogs provide a home for is this one right here. Now, you might not recognize this one because it doesn't have its colors on it, but this is the shell from an ornate box turtle. Ornate box turtles are just one of the animals that prairie dogs depend on, that depend on prairie dogs to make their homes. The ornate box turtles can dig a little, but they're not amazing diggers like the prairie dogs are. So what the box turtles will do is they'll wait for the prairie dogs to dig the tunnels. The box turtles then will go wandering around. They'll find those tunnels and they'll go ahead and become roommates and live with those prairie dogs in the tunnels. Now, they also are pretty clever. We see that there's bison behind us. Well, those bison also do a lot of one thing: poop. We all love to talk about poop. I know it's early in the morning, but here at the zoo, poop is pretty important to us. And believe it or not, poop is pretty important to a box turtle as well. Oh, they're coming right up to us. So what happens is these box turtles will climb up onto that bison poop. They'll use their claws to break it open. And guess what they do? They'll eat the worms and the bugs inside. So box turtles depend on prairie dogs to dig their tunnels, and they depend on animals like bison and other animals to help provide them some bugs to eat, and of course the grasses that they'll eat as well. So we do have lots and lots of diggers. Now, box turtles need those prairie dog tunnels. Another, I think, one of the most fascinating animals in Kansas is this one right here. Now, this is a plush. This isn't a real burrowing owl, but is the burrowing owl. The burrowing owl is an animal that also depends on those box turtle habitats. The burrowing owl doesn't live in the trees. It lives on the ground. And guess what they love to do? They sit up on top of prairie dog burrows, and they scan around looking for things to eat. Now you might go, oh, but Miss Shanae, would they eat the prairie dogs? They like things a little bit smaller than prairie dogs. So they might be eating the crickets and some of the smaller mice and things like that, but otherwise they would leave the prairie dogs alone. But come nighttime, when most owls, this little burrowing owl does. It's what it's named for. It goes underground into those prairie dog burrows. So if it wasn't for the prairie dogs, our box turtles wouldn't have as many homes, and the burrowing owls wouldn't have as many homes. So those diggers are pretty important to our Kansas prairie. Now we've talked about below the soil. Let's go above the soil a little bit, and we're going to talk about the pollinators. The pollinators are our insects. They're those animals that are so shy. One of our very best pollinators that's out there is this little guy right here, the honeybee. Now, what surprises us is there's several different types of honeybees out there in the world, over 100 different types of bees that are out there. Not all bees pollen on it. As it takes one plant to the next plant, it helps that plant grow its fruit or its berries or any other type of thing that it needs.
One second, our microphone went out again. I'm sorry, guys. Miss Carrie.
Successful.
There we go.
Can we hear us now?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay. So honeybees are those great pollinators out there. Another pollinator that you guys will see right now flying through Kansas are those monarchs. We can do a lot to help monarch butterflies as well by planting milkweed and dill and some other plants in our very own yards to help those prairie pollinators as they travel through Kansas. So we've looked below the ground, we've looked on top of the ground. Guess what, guys? We're gonna look up high now. These are the birds that fly so high, that find the food on our prairie lakes and sky. One of the very first we will talk about is the meadowlark. Now, I'm going to try and see if we can listen here. Let's listen up. Can you guys hear that? Raise your hand if you've ever heard that. If you're playing outside, the meadowlark is an animal that loves to live on the prairie. They eat a variety of things from insects to seeds, and they love to sit up our prairie fences, and they are our Kansas state bird. In fact, some people say that their chest right here, this front part of their body, is bright just like our very own Kansas sunflower. So when we look at the prairies, we think about all those prairie birds. Boys and girls, here's something too that we need to remember. Although we're used to hearing birds everywhere and seeing birds, we can hear the blue jays out here right now. A robin just flew by us. Our birds are not nearly as healthy as they used to be. As a matter of fact, some of the birds we call songbirds, the ones that have that beautiful song, some of them are disappearing from our prairies. So just by helping protect our prairies, we're making sure that these birds can stay healthy as well. Now, the meadowlark is a little bird. This is about real size for a meadowlark. Do you guys think we have big birds in Kansas too? We do. One of the largest birds that we have in our state is the pelican. Now, boys and girls, some of you might be going, what? We have pelicans in our state. Well, we do. They're not on the prairies, but they're on those prairie lakes. Even our folks here in Sedgwick County, even if you just go out to Cheney Reservoir, you can find pelicans, sometimes by the hundreds there. And those pelicans can stand about as tall as my waist, and when their wings go out, they're about as big as my arm span. That's pretty big. Now, if you guys know anything about birds, you know that pelicans have one really cool thing, and that's that big pouch that hangs down from their bill. That pouch is what helps them catch their food. Lakes in the prairie are so important, and often they're called, smaller lakes are called playas or prairie potholes. And then, of course, we have our reservoirs that humans have built that also help bring those birds in. Now, we've looked underground, we've looked on top of the ground, and now we've gone to the sky. We're going to focus back here on land again, and we're going to look at the grazers. Those grazers that roam the prairies, munching on grasses as they go. And when we think of grazers, the very best grazers to think about are these ones right down here. These are our prairie bison. Now, boys and girls, you might have noticed I said bison and not buffalo. Here's a surprise. We don't have native buffalo here in the United States. It's just kind of accidental. Sometimes, for example, you might have a nickname. Maybe your name is Jacqueline, but you go by Jackie. Well, bison are an animal that when people first started coming over to the United States from Europe, they looked a lot like another animal they know called the buffalo. And so they came and kind of nicknamed them the buffalo. Later on, we realized that several Native American tribes actually called them búfalos or buffalo, which meant meat. So that is how they got their names, because so many native cultures depended on the bison for all of their food. So bison are amazing. Now, again, raise your hand if you've seen bison somewhere in Kansas. A lot of you have if you've been out to Tallgrass Prairie National Park, if you've been up to Konza Prairie, or maybe even Maxwell Wildlife Refuge, just north of Wichita here. But here's the surprise. most bison out there do not have all bison genetics. Those are big words, guys, but what that means is most of them are kind of mutts. They're mixed breeds. When bison populations got really, really, really small, what happened is the conservationists, the people helped trying to protect them at that time, decided that the fastest and quickest way to do that was to mix bison with cows. Now that worked pretty well, except for today when we're really trying to focus on 100% bison. We have to make sure we're not getting into those bison with any cow in them. So we actually took the hair from our bison, plucked it right out of their hides, and had them sampled to make sure that they're 100% bison. And they are, which is really great. So Sedgwick County Zoo, as well as a couple of other zoos, are working hard to make sure we can preserve or we can protect and take care of these really, really important Kansas prairie animals. Now, again, some of you guys might go, but Miss Shanae, what is the difference between a buffalo and a bison? Well, there's a lot of inside differences, but there's a couple of differences you can see really quickly. One of the horns. We've got a couple of them right here, and you can see their horns start on the sides of their head and go up. Buffalo horns start on the top of their head and go down. So right away you can see that difference. Two, look at that fur. They are shaggy, 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 aren't they? Bison have shaggy fur. Buffalo generally have a smoother fur. One of the reasons for that is because these bison, they were made to live on our Kansas prairie. So whether it's 100 degrees outside or whether it's 20 below, the bison's bodies are made to be able to survive in those different environments. So bison are definitely one of the great Kansas prairie animals that we have out there. Now, another really interesting animal are the predators. The predators keep the prairies active. Now, guys, I'm so excited to show you this one. This is the black-footed ferrets. Why does this one excite me so much? Because at one time, this was the most endangered mammal in all of the United States. There were less than 7 animals out there that had babies. From those 7, conservationists, people trying to take care of them, were able to have more. And today, I'm happy to say Kansas is one of the few states that actually has black-footed ferrets running wild. That's pretty darn cool. Oh, our bison are running down there. They heard us talking about the predators and got a little nervous. I don't think a black-footed ferret would bother them at all, but here's an important piece. Black-footed ferrets have a partnership with prairie dogs. Now, it might be a little bit of a one-sided partnership. Black-footed ferrets must have prairie dogs to survive. Prairie dogs are about the only thing they eat. So without a prairie dog town, our black-footed ferrets disappear as well. So we can do a lot of really great things to protect the prairies. Some of them is just to make sure and walk in the prairies. Get outside, smell the flowers, listen to the birds. If you're lucky, you may even see a rabbit scampering around, or if you're up later at night, you might see a possum hiding in a tree. It's important for us to remember, guys, that we are part of our Kansas prairie. The prairie is our nature. So guys, now that we've learned all about some of the plants and animals that are found in our prairies, we're going to see what questions we have about the prairie.
Do we have any questions, Amanda? Miss Amanda?
We do not have any questions at this point.
All right. Well, since we don't have any questions, I will spend just a little bit more time talking about this really cool animal here. Now, boys and girls, some of you might be going, oh, but Miss Shanae, I've seen those in the pet store before. Ferrets, also called polecats, which are domestic, are an animal that sometimes people keep as pets. These are different. This would be like saying a Chihuahua and a German Shepherd are the same kind of dog. They're all dogs, but they're really, really different. So just like ferrets, domestic ferrets and black-footed ferrets are really, really different, even though they might look a little bit the same. Guess what I get to do tomorrow, boys and girls? You'll never guess. I am going to drive all the way out to western Kansas, and I'm going to stay up all night looking for black-footed ferrets. Twice a year, our Kansas zoos go out with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in some of the areas here in Kansas where black-footed ferrets are living, and our job is to do a survey. When we survey, what we're doing is we're looking to see how many we can find. So we're going to go out all night long. You're right, I have my snacks packed, I have my gloves packed, I even have my hand warmers packed. And we're going to go out and we're going to drive through the prairie and we're going to shine a big light in the dark. If we see eyes that are green, then we know it's a black-footed ferret. We'll go up to that area where we saw the ferrets, and we'll put a little cage right next to that hole. Then we'll come back in an hour and see if the ferret has popped back up. If it has, we'll go ahead and bring the cage into our veterinarians that will weigh them, give them some vaccinations just like you and I do. We'll see if they're boys and girls and see if they were born in the wild or if they were born in human care and brought to the wild. Then once all that's done, we get to go bring them back to the exact same hole. So those are some of the fun things that we can do here in our state to help make sure that our prairies stay healthy.
What are some of the differences between like a black-footed ferret that was grown, or I'm sorry, raised, as a pet versus one that was born in the wild?
So if you have a domestic ferret, one of the things that's the biggest difference is they just simply don't have those predatory skills. They're a little shorter usually, they're a little heavier usually, and they're not as muscular. Black-footed ferrets need to be able to chase those prairie dogs down into those prairie dog holes, so they are very, very bendy and flexible. Our domestic ferrets are pretty bendy and flexible. If you've ever seen one, you know that. But black-footed ferrets are just a little bit more. The black-footed ferret is also known as the prairie bandit. If you look at that face, it looks like it has a little band around its eyes. That's how it gets that name, prairie bandit.
Okay.
We do have some
right.
questions now. One of the first questions is from Elise in the first grade. She wants to know, what else do ferrets eat?
Oh, that's a great question. Now, in the wild, the black-footed ferret, again, about almost 100% of everything it eats are black-footed ferrets. Are black-tailed prairie dogs. If it can't catch a prairie dog, it might also go after a mouse or something else, but it only eats other animals. Domestic ferrets, the ferrets that someone might buy in a pet store, they have been, they're able to eat different foods specifically made for domestic ferrets. So they'll eat kind of a ferret chow instead of meats. But if you gave a black-footed ferret a chow, they'd look at you and say, "Pah, no way." They have to have that different meat to eat. That's a great question. Thank you.
Awesome. And Wilder, also in the first grade, wants to know, do prairie dogs do anything else to help the prairie?
Oh, that's also a good question. So prairie dogs do a variety of different things. One is that, again, they make those tunnels that lots of other animals live in. Salamanders live in it, spiders live in them, even badgers can live in prairie dog villages. Prairie dogs also, though, can help make sure and keep grasses a little bit lower. Prairie dogs only want to live in areas where the grasses are already short. So if we're at a mid-grass, which is a foot tall or higher, or a tall grass, prairie dogs won't live there at all. Now, some people don't like prairie dogs. They're afraid that the prairie dogs are going to compete with their cattle for food. And that's something that's understandable. Some ranchers will manage their land to not have prairie dogs, while other ranchers manage their land so that both prairie dogs and cattle can live on that property. And in those particular cases, the prairie dogs provide a wealth of resources and a lot of food for a lot of animals. Black-footed ferrets eat them, ferruginous hawks eat them, and other wildlife living on the prairie like the swift fox might eat them as well. So you don't want to be a prairie dog. Lots of things eat you.
Those are the only questions that we have at this point. We have about 4 minutes left.
Okay. Well, I will show you then one last thing here. We talked about some of the animals that live on our prairie waterways. When we looked at the birds, we talked about the pelican. Sometimes we forget, though, about those invertebrates. Invertebrates are those things without a backbone. So if you take your hand and feel the back of your neck, you can feel those lumpity bumpity spots back there. That's your backbone. This animal right here has no backbone. Its crispy, crunchy coating is on the outside, called an exoskeleton. This is a cast. It's not real, boys and girls. This is a cast of a crawdad or a crawfish. Now, here's some of the cool things with crawdads in the United States. 3/4 or 75% of all the crawdads in the world are right here in the United States. Isn't that cool? We're the crawdad capital of the world. Crawdads are animals that are pretty neat because they help keep our waterways healthy. They get in those waterways and they'll eat some of the decaying matter, that stuff that's kind of rotting and aging in the water, and they keep those healthy. Some crawdads even make their burrows out of water, and they call them crawdad chimneys. If you're ever driving along and see just these strange little tube-like structures that are made out of dirt in the ground, those could be crawdad chimneys. So there's a couple of different types of crawdads that will do that. And here in Kansas, we have several different types of crawdads that you can see. Again, always in those waterways. The thing you have to worry about with crawdads is this right here. Crawdads are related to crabs and lobster, and they have pinchers. So boys and girls, if you're ever playing in the creeks and the ponds, be really careful for those pinchers because you could get pinched. When a crawdad gets frightened or scared, it will roll its tail up and shoot itself backwards. It's pretty amazing to watch. So I encourage you guys to all get outside. Maybe not this morning, it's still a little chilly out, but I encourage you guys to all get outside. Listen to the cottonwoods. We can hear them blowing in the breeze right now. Listen to our different birds that are out there. And if you're a nature lover, one of the best things you can do is to get the iNaturalist on your parents' phones, and then you can help identify all the different animals that are out there. And remember, boys and girls, this program was sponsored by the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks Chickadee Checkoff program. Just one of the great ways we can help protect some of the animals that live in our state.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shanae. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining us today. This will conclude our Chickadee program. Have a great day, guys.